Hey, John Gilroy here. Some listeners are familiar with Elastic and some aren't. Well, all the people on Wall Street sure know about Elastic. It's had explosive growth. Today, what that success means to the federal government. Hit the music, Manny. Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast, a podcast that connects you to federal technology leaders. My name is John Gilroy, and I'll be your moderator. Our guest in the virtual studio is Chris Thompson, Global Vice President of Elastic. We mentioned that earlier. Chris, been a while since last time I saw you was in this $25 million radio studio, huh? That was a while back, huh?
It has been a while, John. Always great to see you.
Yeah, I've known Chris for a while, and just before we started recording, he said, "Well, why'd you choose Elastic? You could, it's pretty well known in the community." And we're talking about the leaders of Elastic and the family and the growth. It just seems like it's a great company, isn't it?
Yeah, it's fantastic. I joke all the time, John, that's the best kept secret in tech. You know, Elastic's one of those companies that almost everyone uses in their daily or weekly lives, and they just don't realize it. We're the second largest search company on the planet behind Google. So when you search an Uber and that geolocation match that happens in the background between you and Uber, that's Elastic. When you go home and search for a Netflix movie at night, that's Elastic. When you go to Home Depot and you're searching for a hammer where the aisles are, that search that happens in the background is Elastic. So we're very widely deployed, especially with our search capabilities. And a lot of folks just don't know a lot about the company. We've been developer focused and engineering focused.
I think it's almost like Nvidia. I remember writing about Nvidia years ago, and people go, "Nvidia, what's that?" And all of a sudden now, everyone knows Nvidia. And so I think this is a similar type company where it's. In fact, you guys have a relationship with Nvidia. I mean, it's like, well, it's that similar, so it's great. I went to your website. I've been doing some research on the company. There's like 12 topics. We have like a half hour, okay? So I'm not going to pick any of those 12 topics. I'm going to pick something that seems to be bubbling up more and more in the federal marketplace here. I was at an Air Force event, and they had a general from the Space Force talk. These guys are brainiacs, and I thought he was going to talk about, post-quantum encryption and, LEO versus GEO, and then he said the third pillar is acquisition. What the heck? And so Space Force is dramatically growing. You're probably involved there as well. But I think this is something that maybe we have to address because I tell people, well, just write in pencil. Don't even write in pencil anymore. The technology is changing so fast, and I think acquisition, the federal government has to adapt to it. And I think you guys have a good story when it comes to acquisition of the federal government. And that's what I want to maybe highlight in this short little interview here and talk about that and your partnership with the GSA. Maybe you can set the stage for us here, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So Elastic is, again, back to the best kept secret in tech. We're very widely deployed across the federal government. Elastic really sits at the nexus between artificial intelligence, data, and cybersecurity. And then we also do a lot around the network observability space. So widely deployed across most of your largest federal agencies. We're approaching the standard across all of DoD for security incident event management and threat hunting. So widely deployed there. We are the standard for the CDM dashboard for all bringing in all the security data and threat hunting in the CDM dashboard. And that relationship across CISA continues to expand, and they use Elastic there. We're also the standard at GSA that kind of pulls together their zero trust environment across their visibility and aggregation layer for the data. So we have some, very wide deployment across government. And a couple of things that Elastic does uniquely is one, we really focus on development around our storage efficiency and the ability to drive down the cost of data storage. There's a lot of companies out there that as you put more data into the platform, your cost goes up, and that becomes untenable after a while for our government customers. You want to put as much data in the system as you can. You don't want to have to make a trade-off between security posture and the amount of data you have in the environment, for example, or you don't want to trade off between healthcare outcomes, the amount of healthcare data you can put in the system if you're using it for diagnostics in healthcare. So you want to put as much data into the platform as possible, but you don't want the cost of the platform to increase just with the amount of data. So we've done a lot of innovation around the reducing cost and efficiency of putting data into the platform, and actually reduce the cost of our licenses frequently to customers by doing that. The other thing that we've done, John, is we really focused on, we're an open source company. We started as an open source company. We are very committed to maintaining and continue to being an open source company. And we embrace, as a result of that, we really take a leadership position in open standards. So we have a common data schema called Elastic Common Schema, and we have open sourced that schema to the Open Telemetry project. They came to us and said, hey, Elastic's widely deployed. We'd like you to open source your data schema, which facilitates the ability to share data, right, and not get locked into a particular vendor. So we've open sourced our data schema for both our security and our log data. So to answer your question, we've been working with GSA and they're around their OneGov program. And the idea there is instead of each agency buying Elastic or any other software at a different price, why not the government leverage the economies of scale to get a consistent price and a consistent solution that they can roll out to drive technology modernization and cost efficiency? And that made a ton of sense to me, right? I've been working with the federal government since 2003 and state government as well. And I said, hey, this just makes too much sense. And we are committed to helping our government customers get access to Elastic to operationalize their data or improve cyber posture, however they want to use Elastic. And we want them to get access to Elastic at the most efficient cost and capability that we can deliver. So OneGov just made a ton of sense. And I sat down with the leadership at OneGov along with our CEO, Ash, and my boss, Mark Dodds. We had a bunch of folks involved. And as a result, we've got a multi-year agreement with GSA OneGov at a standardized price and standardized volume pricing. And it's been fantastic.
Well, there's the Tom Cruise phrase I just wrote down. Show me the money. And this is all great. And we have to do this and we green curtains and we that and we paint it red. But, so what? I mean, you got to show me the money. And I think this is a cost savings with collectively offering a substantial discount, which I think is almost mandatory here in 2025 for selling the government, isn't it? I mean, you've got to, that's your opener.
Yeah. John, you're right. And look, anyone that's been selling to the government for a long time, and I think any of the government employees that have been in this space for a long time, we're all really committed to the mission of government, right? And whether that's improving care and service to the veteran or better enabling our war fighters or, improving the delivery of Social Security benefits to the retirees or, just improving the ability of government to deliver services to the citizen, whatever their mission is. In that spirit of, hey, we're all in this together and we're trying to help enable the government with technology to solve mission challenges. We want to do that in the most effective and efficient and open standards approach possible, right? And that's one of the reasons I love being at Elastic, because it is such a mission focused company that's really in it to help the government solve big problems.
So how does it streamline procurement then?
Well, so the GSA contracts have been around forever. It used to be years ago that when you purchased anything through the government, it did go through a GSA contract. Now, there are a lot of open market contracts at various agencies. Everybody's familiar with SOUP, for example. And the reason for that is there was a time when GSA became a bit of a bottleneck, so they wanted to break up those procurements for agility's sake. Now, with this OneGov contract, because we have a pre-negotiated long-term multi-year price, any agency that wants to buy Elastic and get a volume-based predictable price over the next few years can buy it off the GSA OneGov contract. So it's a much more efficient procurement process. And again, gives our customers a very predictable acquisition price at the scale of the entire federal government. You don't have to worry about negotiating price at a single agency level. And again, it gives you that predictability in the out years as well, because it's a multi-year contract.
I have a daughter who's a master's degree in finance. We talk about these things all the time. And I said, well, the market says, well, Wall Street says Elastic has got a better mousetrap. And so maybe someone from the federal government wants a better mousetrap. And so just getting it faster can accelerate the innovation. I think sometimes speed is the innovation. And so maybe this is why the Air Force General talked about this acquisition reform, because speed is innovation. If you have a good product, it's almost double innovation, isn't it? So I think it accelerates this technology adoption, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot of, look, we all understand there's a lot of technical debt in our government agencies that it's hard to work through, right? Technology modernization has been talked about by, every administration, I think for the last 6 or 7 administrations, right? Everybody's trying to figure out how to relieve this technical debt. Obviously, the Cloud First initiative was a great way to do that as the government continues to adopt cloud and move forward. And I think GSA OneGov and this focus on technology modernization is, again, continue to move that ball forward and eliminating technical debt and putting our government agencies on a agile, modernized platform. I mean, you hear all the time, right? We talked a lot about Social Security and some of the challenges of modernizing the Social Security system and how brittle that IT environment has become because they're running on a lot of legacy systems, right? And hey, they've got to bring that forward, but they have to do it without breaking things. So contracts like GSA OneGov are going to allow that to happen more quickly, as you said.
I listen to podcasts. I listen to podcasts about the government, and I listened to an interview with this guy at the Idaho National Lab, one of these brainiacs, with the 200 IQ, and they were talking about sensors and data, and they have a lot of information, and the amounts increased drastically. So at the beginning of the conversation, you talk about the amount of data coming in and handling it efficiently. I mean, this is a big part. I mean, there are sensors now that are in so many places bringing in so much information. It's amounting to the point where maybe it's a matter of being able to search, and that's what your central offering was initially but it's so much, it's almost like they played right into your hand here. I mean, like 10, 15 years ago, yeah, we had some data, but talk to the national lab people, that's out of control.
Yeah, and it's just got to continue to grow. And it's so exciting when you start to think about, if you can operationalize this data at scale, if you can access the data, if, you hear our founder, who's our CTO of the company, Shai Bannon, you hear him talk about it. And how do we get to a point where we can chat with our data, how we can interact with our data easily to get the information that we want at the right time and quickly, right? That's the big challenge. Everybody's trying to figure out how do we break down all these data silos and are able to interact with our data and chat with our data to get the information that we need at the right time. And again, whether it's providing better diagnostics in healthcare. I mean, if you think about how you take all the healthcare data in the world or at least all the healthcare data in the VA, for example, and you put that into a data platform that allows you to interact and chat with that data, how that would improve diagnostics, right, for veterans. There's just so much that we can do with the data, and I think we're right at the cusp of that, especially with what's happening in AI. But yes, Elastic, and you hit on it, John. Our roots are the ability to search massive data, structured, semi-structured, unstructured data at scale very, very quickly. And the messy data, the unstructured data, the semi-structured data is really our sweet spot. And then increasingly with the evolution now of large language models and generative AI, those models require something called a vector database or vector search to be able to create some, without getting too far in the weeds, some data adjacencies to make those models more efficient. And Elastic is one of the leaders globally in terms of vector search platforms. So we're doing a lot in terms of being able to take private data and then layering a large language model that's trained on public data on top of that to make that data much more accessible.
When you read about artificial intelligence, I think it's at a maturity level now where people are getting more comfortable with it. And now they're maybe looking at the quality of the data they're feeding into these machines. And it fits right in when you said, unstructured. If you have what they call OT, operational technology, in a lab in Utah, this isn't an initial spreadsheet.
That's right.
This is like, who knows what it is? And so there's questions concerned that stuff is being poured in. Yeah, we want to pour this into AI. Well, what about, preparing the data before we even talk about this AI? Yeah, but I want to dazzle my boss. Well, you're not going to dazzle your boss with partial, incomplete, or biased information. And I just think that those words that you use there for unstructured, there's so much information out there, and there's a podcast in town called Feds at the Edge. Well, there's a lot of feds at the edge now, and so much information on pouring it in an unstructured format. It can lead to bad AI is what I think.
Yeah, for sure. So it's really important, yes, that you take any bias out of the models, and there's a lot of development work that's happening there. Our sweet spot at Elastic, what we do, I think, better than anybody else on the planet in terms of data, and whether it's security data or, like you mentioned, unstructured data, log data. Log data is by design or mostly unstructured. So we're really good at taking log data and doing log analysis for either SecOps or NetOps. But what we do, I think, better than anybody is we're able to help agencies in public sector in particular access their data no matter where their data lives. So if you've got data on premise, if you've got data in AWS or GCP or Azure or any of the hyperscalers, you can index that data where it sits and search it centrally. And we are very, very good at that. If you hear the DoD talk about it, they talk about a data mesh architecture. That's really what they're talking about at its core, is being able to index the data where it lives. And one of the big challenges with data today is data duplication, right? Hey, if I want to index my data to do security with it, I got to duplicate it and move it over here. And then if I want to index my data to be able to do AI, I got to duplicate it and move it over there. And it's just not practical or cost efficient to do that. So why not index the data where it lives, put small elastic clusters out in your data where it is, and then be able to search it centrally and index it once and use it for a whole bunch of different things. Use it for SecOps, NetOps, enablement of AI. So yeah, that's like you said, we're sitting in this sweet spot now that's driving a lot of growth, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I see this parallel here where if feds are at the edge, increasingly they're pushing compute to the edge. Well, what you're doing is you're pushing index to the edge or to another area. It just, what that does is all kinds of good things. It speeds things up and reduces burden on servers, and it can add for a lot of efficiency. I've got a computer in front of me. It says Intel on the inside, and I decided, well, maybe you guys have like Elastic on the inside for all the stuff you're doing at Google and Amazon. It's their stuff, but it's really our stuff in there. Maybe it had little stickers or something. Can you imagine that? I mean, I wouldn't want to try to go to any data centers and put that in there, but I think that's your magic here.
I agree. We just announced a partnership last week with Google and Gemini and what they're doing, and they're using their Gemini agent platform and using Elastic in the background to be able to index and access that data, and using our vector platform and our retrieval augmented generation capability. So we are partnering a lot with the hyperscalers to do that, to give them that reach beyond just their data environment, but being able to reach out into the self-managed data, the on-prem data as well, and feed that into these models. So a lot of partnerships there between the hyperscalers and Elastic.
Yeah, good. In fact, I'll be down at Google Public Sector at the end of the month, and I'll be recording from there, and I'll drop by your booth and see what's going on. A lot of our listeners are saying, well, yeah, okay, give me a story. Give me a case study, and I'll have to charge you $400 an hour if I say that. Tell me a story about a success story that Elastic has can brag about, or you talk to your neighbors or something,
Yeah. So we've got a few of them. I'll give you an easy one, but this was a great impact. So Georgia Southern University had we do a lot with the state and local space as well, and they had they service a high percentage of financially disadvantaged kids, and they want to make sure that these kids that are applying know the financial tools available to them so they can get financial aid. But most websites we go to, when you type something in and you try to find information, you get pages and pages of URLs, and you got to try to figure everything out. And it's hard to get the data that you need. So we worked with them to develop, to index the data into Elastic, and then put a large language model on top of it. So now when a student goes in and says, hey, I live here, I want to go to Georgia Southern, and what is my what are my financial aid options? It immediately pulls up exactly the information that they need. They can chat with the data and then get some very specific feedback to their needs. And it's really improved enrollment for folks that are in financially disadvantaged circumstances to be able to attend the university. So just little use cases like that. But you think about the potential to expand that to all of our government agencies, where if you're a new retiree and you want to understand how to access your benefits at Social Security, or you're a veteran and you want to understand what your veterans benefits are. I mean, all of our government agencies are trying to improve how they interact with their constituents. In fact, I'll give you one other quick example. The VA, we were doing a demo with the VA a few weeks ago with the PACT Act, right? You've seen a lot of signs around town where, veterans that were exposed to open burn pits in the Middle East have some additional benefits they can apply for. And it was being advertised, right? And as a veteran, you can go onto the VA site and you click on, hey, what is the PACT Act? And do I qualify? And then you get a bunch of pages of URLs. We built a demo where we indexed the publicly available data that's available on the VA website, put a chatbot in front of it that's powered by AI, and you could speak to it. You didn't even need to type anything in. You could just hit a button and ask questions. Hey, do I qualify for the PACT Act? Hey, the bot comes back. Hey, when and where did you serve? You say, hey, I served in this part of the Middle East in these times. And it goes, yes, based on that, you qualify. Would you like us to email you more information? You can type in your email address. It'll actually email you the application, all the qualifications, the whole thing. So I think the ability of technologies like ours to be able to make data more accessible and more usable for the average person without having to understand a query language or, it's just really, we're just at the cutting edge of this stuff. So I'm really excited about where it's going.
Yeah, I think you're at just the beginning here too. If you're listening to this and you're out squat rack or walking your dog or something, I will put a link to this announcement, I think, with GSA and Elastic. I'll put a link to that because I think it's interesting to know and see what the values are there, because there's a lot of cost savings involved. And now I got to ask the crystal ball question, which I'm afraid to ask anymore. I mean, okay, so let's go 3 or 4 years down the road. If this is just the beginning, what new aspects to Elastic and the federal government do you see developing? What are like the big mountaintops you see in the horizon there?
Well, I don't know if I'm going to be as bold, John, to predict 3 or 4 years out, but I'll tell you in the immediate future, we're doing a lot with agentic AI, and we just acquired a company last week, Gen AI, out of Germany, and it's a model building technology that allows you to build models in air-gapped environments or for specific use cases, right? The big large language models do a lot of great things. And because, again, as an open source, open standards company, we partner with all of those models. This is more about building models for specific use cases or in air-gapped environments for government customers, but allowing your AI capability now to act with some autonomy to help you with a particular use case or problem. And that's moving AI out to the edge. And that's really where things are going, right? That's really going to accelerate the use of AI. And I'll give you an easy use case for that one too, that we've implemented internally at Elastic that we've seen tremendous success around, was essentially we built an agentic AI use case for folks that wanted to get support for their Elastic environment. And we have a big open source user community as well. So folks that are just trying to learn how to use Elastic. And you essentially can log into our support and interact with an AI agent to help you get an answer to your support question. And it's not just a chatbot, right? It's actually helping you diagnose some of the challenges and issues by using agentic AI capability. And we found that it reduced and again, don't hold me to these numbers, but it reduced our number of interactions with a support representative by about 6 or 7%, and more importantly, the satisfaction of our Elastic customers getting their support answered quickly went way up. So we're starting to see more and more of that type of use case where folks want to get questions answered. You think about the potential impact with all of our government agencies, right? And how folks interact with the agencies, taking burden off of call centers, taking burdens off of support desks, help desks, how to get benefits. So I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit, not necessarily sexy use cases, but really impactful use cases for agentic AI. And again, we're just scratching the surface there. But I think we're going to start to see a lot more of that.
Yeah, and I think our listeners are going to start seeing a lot more of Elastic out there. These partnerships with Nvidia, partnerships with the major hyperscalers. I think it's something people are going to just have to realize and understand the value of that, especially for reducing cost. And really, it just speeds up innovation. And how can you, with the speed of change here, that's really going to be the winning formula, I think. Well, unfortunately here, Chris, we are running out of time. I'll put those links in the show notes so listeners can find out about that new partnership. You have been listening to the Federal Tech Podcast. I'd like to thank my guest, Chris Thompson, Global Vice President at Elastic.
Thank you very much, John. Great speaking with you as always.